Acting through the will of God, a blindfolded boy selects a new pope for Egypt's minority Coptic Christians. But how will the new man in charge deal with a rapidly changing Egypt and the evolving role of Islam in politics? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Shuli Ghosh. Welcome to the programme. Egypt's Coptic Christian Church has a new pope. Bishop Tawadros takes over from his charismatic predecessor who died in March after leading the church for 40 years. But he's facing difficult times ahead. Egypt's Copts have long complained of discrimination by the state and the Muslim majority. And with the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, they're feeling increasingly vulnerable. The recent attacks on Coptic Christian churches, in which dozens have died, have added to the fear. Mike Hanna reports now on an ancient ceremony to choose the new church leader.
Those in the cathedral believe the hand will be guided by God. A blindfolded altar boy selects one of 3 parchments bound by wax, each bearing a candidate's name. And the identity of the new pope is revealed. A double celebration for the new pope who turned 60 on Sunday. Bishop Tawadros, long seen as a senior figure within the church, who's campaigned for improving the relationship between Egypt's Muslims and the Coptic minority. Born in Cairo, he holds degrees in pharmacy and theology and has served as Bishop of Beheira in the Upper Nile Delta in recent years. Many of Egypt's Copts have felt sidelined in this time of momentous political change, and there's great concern that Christian freedoms may not be enshrined in a new constitution that could be based on Sharia or Islamic law.
As long as the country is strong and gives Copts their rights, the church's role is religious. But if the country violates my rights, I will look to the church for more.
And a nun who comes from the same district as the new pope outlines the challenges she sees.
We need a church in every district. We need national unity. And we Copts need to feel that we belong in this country. There are many things the new pope must achieve.
And amid the celebration, the hope that a new pope's call for religious freedom will ring out as loud as the bells. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
So where now for Egypt's Coptic Christians in a time of change? To answer this, I'm joined by my guests who are all fittingly in Cairo. Bishop Angelos is Bishop of the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria and a member of the Holy Synod of the Coptic Orthodox Church. Sami Fawzi, a political analyst specialising in democratisation and citizenship and writes for the Coptic paper Watani. And Abdullah Al-Ashal, former Egyptian Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Professor of International Law and Political Science at the American University in Cairo. Plus, joining us via Skype is Murad Mohammed Ali, Head of PR and Media Relations for Egypt's Freedom and Justice Party and former media advisor for the Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi during his election campaign. Murad, I know that you've only got a few minutes to spare, so I'm going to start with you. Clearly, this is a critical time for Christians in the new changing Egypt. Is President Morsi going to reach out to the new Pope?
First, I would like to congratulate our brothers, our Copts brothers, for electing their new Pope. And we are, as Dr. Katatni, the president of the FEGP, has mentioned, that we are very optimistic about the collaboration with the new spiritual leader of the church and of the Copts. And we believe that we can cooperate together in the future to establish the proper values of freedom, of justice, and of equality. And we believe that we have a lot to share and have a lot to work together on this domain.
But this is something, I'm sorry to interrupt, Murad, but this is something that the Freedom and Justice Party has said before. This is something that President Morsi has said before, that there is going to be new legislation to ensure equality amongst all Egyptians, regardless of religion. What have we actually seen?
It's actually what we have seen, that we have seen the parliament has been dissolved after 100 days of being elected. So there was no opportunity for the parliament to issue legislations that were planned to. And this is the liquidity that we are facing in Egypt, and this is the challenge that we are facing in Egypt, that the judges has put us in a challenging situation by dissolving the parliament. And we hope that after the election of a new parliament and after the constitution, there are many legislations and many laws that will be issued to ensure this equality of between Muslims and Christians.
Okay, I just want to explore the relations between Muslims and Christians in Egypt and just put it into context for us, because sectarian tensions between Muslims and Egypt's minority Copts have been escalating since the 1970s, and the period since Egypt's uprising have been among the most testing. Have a look at this. A car bomb exploded outside a Coptic Orthodox church in Alexandria on New Year's Day last year, killing at least 23 and injuring at least 79 people. Sectarian violence in Cairo the following May killed 12 people. And in October last year, 25 people died in fighting with security forces after a protest march in Cairo over the burning of a church. Now, these kinds of incidents, Murad, are increasing the feeling of vulnerability amongst Coptic Christians. What is the government going to do about that?
First, we are feeling sorry about these instances and we are condemning them, and we cannot accept these instances. At the same time, we see these instances as symptoms due to the dictatorship that was prevailing and due to the previous regime, Mubarak regime and Sadat regime, where democracy was absent. And with the absence of democracy, with all people, all Egyptians, Muslims, Copts, men, ladies, everybody was discriminated and everybody was excluded from participating and sharing in the country and the nation development. And this is the phenomena that we were facing, that such unfairness, we were facing that. Our Copts, our brothers, Christian brothers, they were facing that. But let me tell you that Muslim Brotherhoods also were facing that, the same, because we were discriminated, we were put in jail, and we were not allowed to go up in the hierarchy in the government. We were not allowed to have seats in the parliament, neither to have free elections, and even liberals and leftists, because the previous regime was a dictatorship discriminating against everybody. With the new democracy and with the establishment of New Egypt, we have high hopes that all Egyptians will have their roles and will be dealt with equality and with fairness. And that's why we went for revolution. To conclude, what I mentioned, that what we were facing, what our Copts brothers were facing, we, all Egyptians, were facing the same.
Let me bring Bishop Angelos in here. Bishop, first of all, congratulations on the selection of a new pope for the Coptic Christian Church. You've been listening to what Murad Mohammed Ali has been saying there. He's saying that Egypt is moving towards equality for all Egyptians and an end to discrimination. Are you optimistic about that?
I would like to be optimistic. I think there's a big difference between rhetoric and seeing actual action. I've heard the promises, I think we all have. There are very small signs that we're moving in that direction. The only problem is that until now, and we're not talking about only a small period, we're talking about almost 2 years since the uprising, many months into the presidency of the current administration, but we haven't seen any real positive, proactive policies of citizenship building, of cohesion, of what Mr. Mohammed said. I completely agree. The last decades have been about separation, and if you agree with the views of some, it has been a mentality of divide and conquer, which means that there really must be some very robust plans ahead to overcome those decades and to work on getting back what we saw in the first few weeks of the uprising, where people were flying Egyptian flags and it didn't really matter what religion they were. But unfortunately, because the foundation wasn't there, that didn't continue. And I do hope that the rhetoric does turn into robust policy. This must be a top-down approach. There's a lot of work grassroots. There are very good relations between the church and Al-Azhar. All of that is there. we've had Christian-Muslim relations in this country for 1,300 years. So I don't think that's the issue. The issue is there now must be concrete policy to move this ahead and to try to ascertain a reality that is one nation, respecting everyone the same, respecting human rights, respecting civil liberties, and holding everybody accountable at the same time.
Well, Mohamed Morsi has said he would make a Copt one of his vice presidents. Would that be a good move?
That was one of my disappointments, actually, because although we saw that happen and we heard those words, that was very quickly recanted, and it didn't go ahead, and the vice presidents turned into advisors. And I think, unfortunately, that was because of a lot of pressure, even if Mr. Morsi did intend to do so of his own accord, as he promised.
Well, let me get a reaction from Murad to that, because I know that he has to leave us. Murad, why is it not the case that Copts got high positions in government or even became vice president, as Mohamed Morsi had promised?
Let me confirm that Dr. Morsi has met his promise. I'm not a spokesman on behalf of Dr. Morsi, but just to highlight that, because I was a part of the campaign, and during the campaign, Dr. Morsi promised that in the presidential office there will be diversity, including men, women, Muslims, Copts, and all colors of the people. And he hired 4 assistants, only 4 assistants. Each one, they are very high ranked, each one is playing a role. Out of those 4, there are Dr. Samir Morsi is one of those assistants, and he's a very famous liberal Copt, and he was one of the opponents of Dr. Morsi. At the same time, if you look at the FGP, our party, you will find that the vice president of the party, the vice president of Dr. Katatni, is Dr. Rafiq Habib, and he's a very famous Christian philosopher also. And if you look at the diversity of the consultants among Dr. Morsi, in Dr. Morsi group, you will find it the same. What I would like to stress here, what is more critical is not the number of the people who are there. The most critical, and I believe that we all agree on that, is to have a fair chance. That means we need to give an equal chance and fair chance for all Egyptians, regardless of their color, regardless of their sex, regardless of their religion, to get up into the hierarchy. And we have no objection against that. Once we have a Christian who is able to deliver and qualified to take the position, he or she should never be banned or excluded from getting this right and this position, because this is not only his right, but it's also for the benefit of the country.
Okay, Murad, thanks very much. Let me bring in my other guest now. Abdullah Al-Ashal, one of the things that Coptic Christians are increasingly worried about is that Islamists have been in Egypt have been increasingly vocal about applying Islamic law or Sharia in Egypt. I mean, the Salafist parties in particular have made it a central part of their platform. How worrying is that for non-Muslims?
Yes, I think talking about the application of Sharia and the differences among all the specialists, especially the Islamists or the groups who are constituting the Salafists and the Muslim Brotherhood, there is some difference between them on the political level, because the Salafists are accusing the Muslim Brotherhood that they are mitigating the phrasing of Article 2 so as to satisfy others who are liberals and Christians, and to keep balance with the society, and to promulgate or to keep their power in office and to be there all the time. So this problem between the Salafists and the Muslim Brotherhood is also triggered by the Copts. The Christians are saying that the expansion of the definition of Sharia would be harming them, and the church for the first time was voicing their grievances. So I think this polemics about Sharia and how Sharia does mean and the application of Sharia in Egypt, this is a new trend in Egypt, because before that we didn't hear about the application of Sharia. But in fact, in the slogans
and just
the
one thing
programs
that
of the
you said there
candidates-
that I do want to pick up on, that a lot of members of the Coptic Church have become more vocal in standing up for what they want and talking about what rights they expect and what freedoms they want to have.
Yeah, some religious men and priests who are representing the church in the Constitutional Assembly are voicing very strong opposition to the definition of Sharia as it has been presented by the Salafist and the Muslim Brotherhood. This is why I think this cleavage between the two sides, between those who want Sharia to be applied immediately, and they look at Sharia only partially as sanctions and punishments, and those who are looking to the case as a traditional case as it has been in Constitution of 1971. In fact, this is expanding now and spreading, and I think they have to settle down and to sit together and to see that the Egyptian society had been a Muslim society since 14 centuries, and they are not inventing Islam in Egypt now. And this is triggering many problems with the Christians and also the liberals.
Do you agree with that, Sami, that there is a widening divide between Muslims and non-Muslims in Egypt, despite all the talk of unity that we saw in Tahrir Square in the pre-revolution days?
It's quite sophisticated, because the unity we faced in Tahrir Square, the same unity we witnessed during 1990th revolution in Egypt, that some problems erupted after the moments, the short-lived moments of coexistence between Muslims and the Christians. We have to be honest with ourselves that Copts in Egypt face inherited problems for a long time: building and repairing churches, political underrepresentation, very conservative social atmosphere, and also lack of positions in government apparatus. So all of these problems should be solved. It's not a time for words, it's not a time for exchange wishes between Muslims and the Christians, but it's a time for the government to prove that it's a government for all Egyptians, the state representing all citizens, and it's a time to accommodate all the demands of all the people and reflect the country of justice and freedom. Then we will witness a different citizens movement in Egyptian society, that people will feel equal before the law, no matters or regardless of their religion, race, social position, or social status. So it's a matter of social policies, not a matter of words.
Yeah. And the question is, how do you achieve that? I mean, for example, should Coptic Christians have more say in the drafting of the new constitution?
It's not a myth. You can achieve it if you come up with certain public policies to address problems. I will give you an example. In terms of building and repairing churches, there are many restrictions imposed on the process which make Christians unequal with Muslims in making and building and repairing worship places. Why we don't have a new legal framework that organizing, building and repairing a church in a highly predictable, legal and transparent way? Why you don't have it? There are many drafts of...
Let me bring in the bishop here, because I want to ask what he thinks the new pope is going to do about this. How is the new pope going to set about tackling these challenges?
Well, I think Pope Tawadros will continue with the same legacy of the late Pope Shenouda in addressing everything that we have in a cohesive environment between Christians and Muslims. The problem here we're addressing is not just Christian-Muslim. It's an increasingly radicalized fringe that actually is against not only Christians, but against those who are not on the fringe, even if they're Muslims. You're talking about people being more vocal at the moment. The Pope will be involved only when people's rights are not being represented by the government and by the state. People are more vocal because this is a turning point in the contemporary history of Egypt. And we all, Christians and Muslims alike, feel a sense of ownership And this is really make or break at the moment.
Is it also a turning point for the church? Because there's a lot of members of the Coptic Christian Church who are also unhappy with some of the practices of the church. They want to see more say in how the church is run, how the Pope is elected. They want changes in, for example, marriages and divorces. I mean, there are those within who think that there should be changes within the church. Is that also an issue?
I think in some cases, I mean, with the process for the papal selection, this is something we've all struggled with. This statute was put together in 1957. We as a synod struggled with it, but we have no option but to work with it. We understand and recognize that it's completely out of date, but we had to work with it, and it is well and truly in our agenda, very high up to change when there is more stability in the Parliament here, so we can take it through the very necessary steps. In terms of marriage law and personal status law, that is something that will be addressed. We have certain fundamental scriptural beliefs, but as to the practice, the foundation, it can be looked into. But it will be a turning point in some aspects. And I think with the uprising we saw months ago, there's been a real fear barrier that's been broken with all Egyptians. That needs to be harnessed, otherwise it's going to turn sometimes into an anarchy. So I think this energy people have into wanting to change their nation needs to be harnessed, needs to be addressed, and needs to be used for a much better Egypt for everyone. Where we stop talking about Christian Muslims. I wish we could stop talking about Christians and Muslims. I've said this numerous times. If we speak about human rights, civil liberties, God-given rights that are for everyone, then I think we're going to move ahead.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
That would be a wonderful vision.
Want.
Sami, let me ask you, how do you think the new Pope will respond to concerns within the Coptic community?
I think we have a lot of files on the table, that he has some internal files within the church, like building institutions. After the departure of the charismatic Pope, I think it's a time to build and strengthen the institutions inside the church. And I think also it's an important time to energize and give a real momentum to educational institutions inside the church. This is a time to change the religious discourses and the religious rhetoric in society and build ties with Islamic community and the Islamic establishment representing in Al-Azhar and in Ifta. But I think the Pope will need some time to arrange the house from within, from inside, because it requires some sort of accommodative spirit. I think he has, and he will support it by other bishops inside the church to do it. But let's look at it from a very wider perspective, that it's a time for a new Pope to start a new era.
Do you agree with that, Abdullah?
Changes.
And do you agree with that? It's time for a new Pope and a new perspective.
Yes, I think the new Pope will be wise enough to understand that the cleavages and divisions between Muslims and Christians are artificial. And the Egyptians were living together without having this problem before the 70s. And we remember that in 1972 only, under Sadat, the first problem arose between Muslims and Christians. And now we discovered, after Mubarak, that Mubarak and other foreign enemies were in fact interfering, and they are trying to kick the strong bone of the Egyptian society, which is the link between the Muslims and Christians. And we saw during the revolution how the people were together and everybody forgot his religion, and they were only Egyptians, and even they are Egyptians before they are Muslim or Christians. I think these values have to be now dominating in the Egyptian society, as we have survived with that in the 60s and 70s as well. So now I think the new Pope has a very good occasion to rebuild the relations between Muslims and Christians and to overcome all the problems which are created now by the old regime.
Well, the new government has promised equality for all. We wait to see if that happens. Thank you to all my guests today, Bishop Angelos, Sami Fauzi and Abdullah Al-Ashal. And joining us a little earlier on in the programme, Murad Muhammad Ali. That's it from us. If you have any comments about the show, you can email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net or tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From me, Shiri Ghosh, bye for now.